Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Up for discussion on the programme this week, TV licences for the over 75s, the new ministerial lineup, and the possibility of body-worn cameras for the Isle of Man police. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Is the new Council of Ministers lineup a positive step forward in creating a united government for the Isle of Man? Chief Minister Howard Quayle has revealed his new administration. It sees both of his rivals for the position of Chief Minister last week given key roles. Aaron Michael MHK Alfred Cannon takes on Treasury, while Douglas South MHK Kate Beecroft will head up Health and Social Care. There are also roles for Douglas Central MHK Chris Thomas, who takes over as Policy and Reform Minister, and Douglas South MHK Bill Malarkey, who is in political charge of Home Affairs. Both Glenfaber and Peel MHKs also joined Comyn, with Ray Harmer at Infrastructure and Geoffrey Boot at Environment, Food and Agriculture. Arbury, Castletown and Maloo MHK Graham Crageen returns to the Council of Ministers, this time taking on Education and Children. And Russian MHK Lawrence Skelly continues at Economic Development. Is the lineup one which is likely to unite the island's politicians? Or would it be easier to herd cats? Stu just wondered if the new ministers would go with what the Chief Minister said about having MLCs in departments but not ministers, says Katie. I'm not sure. I would have thought so, yes. He said that if Tim will change the way that people are used in departments, then he'd quite happily go along with that. So I'm guessing that everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet on it. Stu regards Kate Beecroft being made Health Secretary. Firstly, I thought, what on earth is Howard Quayle doing, making Kate Beecroft Health Minister? She knows nothing whatsoever about public health. But then I realised it's the oldest trick in the book. We all know the disaster our new leader and his fabulous new management team have made of Nobles in the last 2 years, and as if that's not bad enough, we've now got Kate to deal with as well. But he knows she's bound to fail because of the state he's left the hospital in. So just like Alan Bell did with Peter Curran as Minister for Education, she's gone within 6 months, takes all the blame for all his failings. Well, they're very clever, says Bill. He's suggesting that there is an amount of Machiavellian behaviour going on in politics, Bill. I mean, this thing comes up a number of times where people say, well, what does he know about that? You know, why is he in charge of agriculture? He's not a farmer or whatever. Why is he in charge of health? He's not a doctor. I mean, that's the way that politics works. Politicians aren't necessarily experts in the field that they're working in. Their job is to effectively take Council of Ministers' decisions forward and to feed back into Council of Ministers from their departments. So, you know, it's a political job. It's not a hands-on job. You don't have to be a doctor to run the health service necessarily. Whether or not it's a benefit to be a doctor, I don't know. I mean, the chief exec, Dr. Malcolm Couch, is a doctor. 2 doctors, he told me when he was on the programme. So, you know, is that the level that we need, that sort of expertise? The political member, the minister, isn't necessarily somebody who's qualified to do the job within the department, but is quite qualified to be a political representative both ways. Stu, I hope at last we have a minister in charge at DEFA who has something about him, where hopefully he'll look after the interests of the taxpayers, won't let himself be manipulated by 5 or 6 farmers. That from Malcolm. With a new government in power, it's time to create a new group that represents the vulnerable and disabled, as they have no platform, and new government should return the chronically ill back to the benefits they deserve. No, they're not scroungers, Frank. The carers' benefits should be increased to a fair level. Well done, Howard. I take it all back. You're a man of vision. That from Rob in Peel. Text here from Sue. She says, I'm fairly sure that Kate Beecroft has been quite involved in public health affairs in the past. Could be wrong. No, I think you're quite right. And, I mean, you know, Kate Beecroft might be just the person that the health department needs. Somebody with good common sense in that, you know, you don't have to be an expert in everything that you're talking about, as long as somebody can explain the pros and cons of every situation. And then it's just, most of these things are down to common sense or pragmatic decisions, aren't they? Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Hello, just to say I really enjoy your programme. My thoughts on Kate Beecroft as Health Minister. Think she'll make a good job. She's open and will do whatever it takes to try and sort out the mess that she's taken on. Good luck to her, says Dee. Yes, well, let's all echo that, shall we? to all the new ministers. Let's hope that they all do well and they all are able to work together to drive the Isle of Man forward. You know, the Chief Minister's talked about the fact that, you know, we're in difficult times. We know that. So let's have a government that's working together to try and navigate these difficult times rather than one that's trying to rip itself apart and score points. Good to see Kate has a post. We'll see if she can walk the walk rather than just talk the talk. Attention seeking from the sidelines, says Dave. Well, yeah, let's see if she can do the job. I'm fairly confident that she can. I'm fairly confident that all the ministers that have been given jobs will be able to do them pretty well, but only time will tell. I'll tell you what does irritate me. I mean, Facebook last week when Howard Quayle was elected Chief Minister already was starting to knock him, and what does he know about it, and he couldn't run a hospital, how can he run a country, and all. I mean, it's just so negative, horrendously negative. Oh, we're all doomed, last person out, turn the lights off. All this negative thinking is no good for anybody, honestly, really. So, you know, let's hope that we've got that new brush in terms of government now, that we've got a whole new shiny government and that they're all going to work together for the benefit of the people of the Isle of Man. And if it goes wrong, it'll go wrong. But, you know, I think that almost by knocking it all the time, it takes people's eye off the ball in that they're so busy sort of protecting themselves from all these allegations and things that they can't do the job. So just a personal view, I just think that our glass ought to be half full for a change rather than half empty. Stuart says, I don't think Dr. Couch is a medical doctor, is he? Yes, he was on the programme a while ago and I didn't think he was either. I thought he was a doctor of hard sums and formulae, and but no, he's a doctor twice over, and one of his qualifications is a medical doctor. If they're arrogant enough to put themselves up for these positions, then they should deal with the flack that goes with it. Well, what a ridiculous thing to say. If they're arrogant, why would you be arrogant to stand as a politician? What's arrogant about that? Are you saying that nobody should ever put themselves forward for anything? Should everybody just sort of shuffle around mumbling? That's the silliest thing that I've seen for a while. Not a great fan of some of the ministerial choices, but let's give them a decent crack of the whip before some people start to rip the back out of them, says Alan. That's my view. You know, I mean, things go wrong, lessons are learned, time to move on and all that. But, you know, let's give these people a chance to establish themselves and do some good before we decide that they're useless. Totally agree, Stu. The half-empty brigade are awful. Good luck to them all, says Anne. Thank you, Anne.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the decision to allow fracking at a site near Blackpool the right move? Hydraulic fracturing for shale gas at the site in Lancashire will go ahead after getting UK government approval. An application to drill at a second site nearby has been delayed while evidence on road safety is looked at. Ministers have given firm Quadrilla permission to drill for shale gas near Blackpool, overturning the decision of Lancashire County Council. It's a decision that's been described as pragmatic. The GMB union also says the extraction of shale gas going ahead is a landmark ruling. It's more than a year since local authorities rejected a planning application on the basis it would cause too much noise and traffic. But there's still significant opposition to the move, and environmental campaigners have raised concerns over the implications of the decision. Is fracking something which should be pursued when it comes to energy resources, or do you share the concerns over the continued reliance on fossil fuels? Well, boy, frack my old boots, he says. This will be a fracking boring topic to start the week. Fracts, says Frank. Oh, it's going to be one of those weeks, isn't it? If you've got a more sensible point of view about hydraulic fracturing, then do get in touch. Why not say that earth tremors occurred at the same time in the same location as test fracking and leave the listener to join the dots rather than overstating things, says Peter. Do you think I'm overstating anything? I don't think so. Stu, there's a video of a woman in America on YouTube actually setting fire to the water coming from the tap as a result of fracking, says Mal. More of your comments, and I'm glad to see we've got a good few comments on this just to thwart Frank. Put fracking is very, very worrying. In the Lake District, what? There were tremors from the Lancashire experiment a few years ago. Got the info from the horse's mouth, says Anne. Oh, OK. Disappointed to see Manx Radio give environmental pressure group Friends of the Earth unchallenged opportunity to spout their propaganda. Cat has zero scientific background and was allowed to scare people about earthquakes. The earthquake cause was the same effect as a lorry driving past. The burning water scare story has been debunked. A simple Google to get the facts right might have been in order as opposed to green propaganda, says Johnny Nonkin. Hey boy, thing is, we can't do anything anything about it. Once government has a stupid idea, the laws crack on with it and suffer the consequences, says G. Okay. Stu, I read earlier in this debate that the water problems in the USA will not occur in the UK because of the difference in depth of the water table. UK level is nowhere near the shale, says Brian. Thank you, Brian. Stu, if indeed earthquakes are a possibility with Sellafield not that far away, this is the one that I noticed earlier on, the ramifications are worrying to say the least, says Pauline. Yeah, that's the concern about this. And then Mark's got a different point of view. The argument about hydraulic fracturing has been hijacked by some very fanatical and close-minded activists. I'd call them environmentalists, as fracking is far better. Environmentalist? As fracking is far better for the environment overall than the current coal, wood and oil burning that it will replace. The pictures of methane in water have nothing whatsoever to do with fracking. That comes from organic decomposition near the ground surface. It would happen regardless of whether there's any fracking going on in the area. Okay, interesting. It has more to do with leaking pipes. Fracking goes on miles down underground and therefore could not be the cause of the water contamination. The earthquake in Blackpool was so mild it didn't even spill so much as a cup of tea. Well, Kat Turner was saying in that interview that, there was talk of damage to properties and things. Maybe she's wrong, I don't know. Coal extraction has had a far greater effect on the environment and human health over the centuries. Whole towns have sunk into the ground thanks to coal mining. This will never happen with fracking. Worrying about drilling into the ground and unleashing unseen forces sounds like a positively medieval perspective on the issue. Well, call me medieval. It's the dark forces that you're unleashing, you see. Not very enlightened. Fracking in the US has been overwhelmingly successful, and the very rare issues caused by bad practice won't happen in the UK due to the far higher legislative framework that the British operations have to work under. So let's stop smashing the spinning jennies, whistling up demons, and embrace a positive technology that will give Britain energy security for generations. Best regards from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Well thought out, and you're obviously for it, which is great. It's always good to hear different points of view on it, and what you say seems to make sense. Stu, on the argument about not producing more gas, I think that the UK would benefit both from security of supply and its balance of payments from producing more gas, preferably from the undeveloped offshore fields. This is from Christine. Some info on safety. I read recently about a study in the USA which has found that it's not the hydraulic drilling and fracking that causes the earth tremors, but the re-injection of water produced in the course of operations. Water is produced from the deep rock strata, which is oil or gas bearing, and it's brought to the surface with the oil. This water is contaminated and can be saline and have a higher level of radioactivity. This does not put drinking water at risk. However, it has to be disposed of, and this is usually done by injecting it back into the strata. This process happens in all onshore drilling activities. Witch Farm is the UK's largest onshore field. BP, who developed it, took great care to protect the New Forest and Poole Harbour. The current operator, Perenco, has continued to do that. Perhaps Greenpeace should look at the quantities of water will be produced from the fracking and how it will be disposed of. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Christine. Let's go to the lines. We've got Kay on, who's got a point of view on this. Hello, Kay.
Before we go any further, I'm a woman, so there might be comments. My view is we take things out of the ground, but we don't replace anything. It's like drilling for oil. We take all this oil out of these areas, and the plates move. Since all this, we now get more tsunamis, we get more earthquakes in countries that not have had them for 20 years or more.
But isn't that global warming that's causing that?
I don't know, but we don't put anything back, and it's the same with fracking, isn't it? We're going to take out, but we don't put anything back.
Well, I think they do. I think Christine just said that they re-inject, or sort of Mark said that they re-inject the water, I think, that comes out of the earth as part of the process with the gas or oil, and I think they re-inject that contaminated water back into the strata.
Right.
So I think
we're not going to get contaminated or anything. We're not going to have earthquakes.
Well, it's like all these things. Those who are for it say, no, nothing to worry about, it's fine. Those who are against it say, oh, we're all doomed and Blackpool Tower's going to fall over. And it's just a case of, I don't know that we'll ever know the full truth about this. It's just looking at the different points of view and deciding which one you think is the most plausible, really.
Yeah, I suppose it looks better than wind farms are a bit of an eyesore, aren't they? So.
Well, yes, they are, but, they're very green. That's the trouble, you see.
Yes.
You know,
Very green.
I think Friends of the Earth are saying that, you know, we shouldn't be relying on oil and gas that much, fossil fuels. We ought to be looking at alternatives. But the minute that you do that, then people say, yeah, but we don't want a big wind farm on our doorstep.
Yeah, I suppose so, really, in that respect.
Difficult.
Okay, that's just my view. I mean, probably somebody will come back and disagree, but never mind.
Never mind. That's what makes the world go
I'm
round.
a lady, and that's. I've been very polite. Thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome. Nothing wrong with being a lady. Kay, it's nice to talk to you today, and you can call us anytime. Did you know in fracking they can drill vertically under our territorial waters without us knowing? Yes, that wouldn't be very British of them, though, would it? But yes, I believe that they can. They can go sort of sideways, can't they, when they're drilling for oil virtually? It gets down under the surface to whatever depth, and then it sort of goes out sideways. If you want to see what fracking does, just look at the prom, says James. How can you possibly link our promenade with fracking? Fracking does cause earthquakes. It's happening in Oklahoma, USA. Fact, says G. Right then, you can't use that word. I'm sorry, G, but that's Frank's trademark. There's an active spring of water on top of Snae Fell, and the water was tested to locate its origin. It was found to be coming from the Cumbrian Hills. Really? So fracking could interfere with our water supply. Really? Spring water at the top of Snae Fell from Cumbrian? Never would have thought that was possible. There you go. Does your last texter have shares in fracking? You're cracking the rocks, therefore the fluids can and do leak through the cracks. It's funny the gases only started coming through people's taps when fracking started, says Dave. Well, a couple of people have now suggested that that's been debunked, Dave, so I don't know. If they fracture the subsoil underground to get the gas in the northwest, what about all the nuclear waste that they buried at Sellafield? Will that leak out? Oh, I'm sure it won't. I sincerely hope it won't. If fracking causes earthquakes and the people in Blackpool are worried the tower might fall over, then surely for the rest of us to be an improvement on Blackpool, says Mal. Not helping, Mal, really.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should subsidised TV licences for the over 75s be reinstated? At the start of September, the Manx government stopped covering the cost of the licence fee for older members of our community, with the exception of pensioners receiving income support. Across the water, those in the same age group will continue to see the cost of their TV licence covered by the UK government during a transitional period, as the cost is transferred to the BBC itself. The decision to scrap free TV licences for older pensioners in the Isle of Man was approved as part of the 2015-16 budget. But at the end of the previous administration, it was pointed out that it was a political decision that the new administration would be able to look at. And that's what a Douglas North MHK will ask 2 more members to do at this month's sitting of the court. David Ashford's motion calls for the free licences to be reinstated with immediate effect, refund those over 75 who've paid the fee since the government subsidy was withdrawn, and for the government to put pressure on the BBC to agree to the same funding arrangements for the Isle of Man as it has for UK residents. Also on the Tynwald Order paper for October is a motion calling for a committee to be set up to look into the issue in response to a petition for redress of grievance put forward by 3 members of the Manx Labour Party. So what do you think about this? Should the decision to scrap the government subsidy for licence fees for the over 75s be reversed? Or should only those who genuinely can't afford to pay it be covered using money from the public purse? Because that's where it comes from. It's not free. In the UK, it's not free. It's covered by the government at the moment, although during this 3-year transitional period, it will be sent back effectively to the BBC to cover those costs rather than the UK government. And what about in the Isle of Man? Do you think that our government should pay this, or should we just be saying to the BBC, as David Ashford said, no, we want the same deal, and we'd like an extra £1 million a year spent in the Isle of Man, please? Your comments. Today's retirees are having it better than any others will have. They can afford it, especially the ex-government employees. Okay. I do wonder if there'll be any money left for pensions for anybody under the age of 40 in years to come, let alone enough money for a Manx pension supplement, free TV licences, free bus travel, subscriptions and the like. Some of the OAPs of the future will probably have to wait till they're 75. How about some fairness for them, says Josh. Yes, okay. And Gary's been on via our Facebook page. He says it should be free for 60 and over. Maybe scrapped altogether and let the BBC make its own money like other companies do. Stu, seeing as the BBC is underspending £1 million a year, multiply this by the number of years we have to pay TV licence fees. That's an awful lot of millions that the Isle of Man's lost. Yeah, fair. Basically, it's theft if you look at the Theft Act, obtaining pecuniary advantage. So our government should just go straight to Plan B and tell the BBC we'll not be paying any licence fee regardless of age, says Mal. Stu, the Tynwald resolution next Tuesday gives many of our newly elected representatives an opportunity to deliver on undertakings given on the doorstep. I wish David Ashford every success with it. This is from John W. What I hope for is an amendment to the resolution to include some of the other penny-pinching cuts of the last 5 years, to give pensioners their free train and tram travel back and reinstate the number 23 bus in Onken. I don't see why TV licences should be free for those who can well afford to pay, and at the same time say that we can't afford some life-changing cancer drugs. Stu, Howard Quayle said if he became Chief Minister he'd reinstate free TV licences to the over 75s. Why then is this to be even debated? It should be a done deal. Wondering if the BBC is going to pay for it should not be an issue. No reason why they should, as we're not part of the UK, whereas Northern Ireland is, says Ken. When we purchase our TV licence, we have to adhere to their terms and conditions. Why is the Isle of Man not considered in their BBC findings for free TV licences? Not yet over 75, but a pensioner. Stu, how about a church tithe to pay for the licence fees, says Cliffy. There's a hot potato. I'll try and pass over that one. The question is how many over 75s there are, how many living alone, also how many TV licence fees the BBC get from the Isle of Man, and also total Sky receive. Well, Sky aren't anything to do with it, are they? Isle of Man government needs to be more business-like in the approach and get a better deal for us all, says John. TV's a luxury and not essential need, says somebody else. Yes, technically, I'm sure you're absolutely right, but, you know, if we've got vulnerable people over 75 living alone or whatever, then the TV is the lifeline to the outside world in a lot of cases. So I don't know. I mean, no, I don't suppose technically it's an essential need, but I think in many cases it probably is, realistically. Manx National Health Fund is still well in surplus until 2035, but it's been hit by a drop in interest rates since 2009. This cash was worked for by today's pensioners. Government workers are a different matter, says G. Hey boy, we don't all get the BBC channels. We don't get all the BBC channels anyway. Why should we pay full fare, says G. I feel over 75s do deserve to have a free TV licence, particularly those on lower incomes or pensions, which put them at a financial disadvantage. They've contributed over most of their working lives into our economy, and many sadly found themselves in the middle of unnecessary wars in their younger days. That's true. Many are not able to get out and about and become isolated and rely on TV for mental stimulation and company. It's only a small token and gesture of goodwill to offer this for our elderly, and we'll all be there ourselves one day, says Ali. Let's go to the lines. We've got Malcolm on. Hello, Malcolm.
I just, Mr. Ashcroft, I think he's very, very good and talks an awful lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think the licences should be reinstated. I'm over 75. For the past 2 years, I've had my free TV licence, and it's been something to look forward to.
Okay.
Whether I can afford it or not, I think is irrelevant. And a lot of people that I know can afford a TV licence. I can afford a TV licence, but it's just something. As you get older, there's less and less to look forward to. No, seriously, there is. And it's just one of those things. For a couple of years before I got the free TV licence, I was saying to people, I said to my wife, I'm really looking forward to getting that. Do you know that? Okay. And it was just something maybe just silly, I don't know. But
one of those little perks, I suppose. Yeah,
if you like. I mean, our government under Mr. Tier, he seemed to nick a lot of things from the pensioners, which didn't seem very fair, and the way he did it wasn't very fair. I think when he was asked would he consider a rethink about the TV licences, he was asked, I think it was Kate Beecroft or somebody in the House asked him, and he said, and I thought, I was listening to it, and he said, and it was a very arrogant sort of no, and just straight no, and I thought that just wasn't very nice.
But I think that their position on it was that it had been debated by Tynwald and agreed by Tynwald that the subsidy for the over 75 was going to go. So, you know, it's pointless then saying sometime after that, oh right, can we relook at this? I think once the House has made a decision, then it needs to stick to things like that. But I think that the previous administration did say this is something that the new boys can look at if they want to. So I think that's why it's being looked at.
Oh, right, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Well, all right. Despite all that, I still think I still think all those old boys and old girls should should have the free TV licence.
Well, I very much appreciate your point of view, because it's right. There are very few little pleasures from government. Brown envelopes that arrive from government are usually demanding money and not giving you anything for nothing. So I can understand that. But you've got to sort of also look at the point of view that for years and years, the Manx government had far too much money that it, may not have been entitled to. So it did lots of things that were nice to haves, but not essentials. And this is probably one of them. But now there's no cash, then, I take your point about that the free licence fee is a nice thing, but wouldn't that money maybe be better going into the health service for treatment or something like that?
Well, yeah, but that can be said about all
that
can be said about why on earth was the slot resurfaced?
Yes.
And, things like that. And there was another bit of road I saw the other day, and I thought, why have they done? Oh, yeah, Fisher's Hill.
Right.
I thought, why have they resurfaced that? That was perfectly all right. But they're resurfacing it. I mean, that's just two sort of daft things, if you like. But they have wasted money and in an awful lot of areas where it could have been, as you just said, been put to good use in the health service and other areas.
All right.
Like looking after us old boys.
Yeah. No, you make some good points, Malcolm, and it's absolutely right as well. It is nice to have the little perk every now and then. Good. Thank you very much for calling. It's been nice talking to you.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Would you welcome the introduction of body cameras by the police in the Isle of Man? The Isle of Man Constabulary is looking to embrace new technologies in a bid to modernise the force and cut back on time-consuming bureaucracy. The first step in this direction has come in the form of a new computer operating system, Connect. At a cost of £1.5 million, the new system will look to streamline the police's outdated IT services and put more officers back on the streets. So what about this? Are body-worn cameras for the police a good idea? Would it make things more transparent for the public and the police officers themselves? Interesting to hear the Chief Constable say that it makes everybody much better behaved, both the cops and the people that they're arresting. Or is this something that you have reservations about? Do you think it's one step further towards RoboCop and Big Brother? James D called earlier, so I think it's a very good idea for the police to have body cameras to protect us from them more than anything else. Then you can only have it as it is and not the way that they say it is sometimes. Okay. Yes, me again, says Christine, completely in favour of body cameras for the cops. I think that perhaps even people who have a tendency to drink too much will realise that they're being recorded and will curb the level of their violent or otherwise unacceptable behaviour. I also think it's better evidence in court of what actually happened rather than having to determine which of the different stories is more likely to be true. I once sat on a jury where a complaint had been made against the police and some film coverage of the event would have helped. Although I quite enjoyed playing Miss Marple, says Christine. Good, OK. Let's go to the lines. We've got our friend Howard on. Hello, Howard.
Just listen to that about the body cams. But strange enough, my wife bought me a dash cam for my birthday at the beginning of October. And I used it yesterday for the first time travelling to Ramsey. And there was a couple of instances going there. They weren't dangerous, but they had the potential.
Yeah.
And when I brought it home, I just plugged into my laptop and played it back. And not only does it pick up the outside, but it also picks up what you're saying in the car, so you've got to be careful. But to me, the body cams for the police are a means of both sides.
Yes.
It makes sure that you don't cross the line or they don't cross the line because they know full well they're going to be recorded.
Absolutely,
time and everything that's the full potential. And to have them here would be handy because you wouldn't even notice them. The average person would walk past a policeman and wouldn't even notice.
Sure.
Because the number of times we go across to the UK and these guys are walking around with them, all you see is a bobby.
Yeah.
You don't see what he's wearing.
I think it's a great idea. And what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. So, like you say, it works both ways, and the courts at least can see for themselves the situation, can't they?
Plus the fact that if these are the same as what my dash cam is, they have the ability to take a still photograph.
Yes.
So if you're in a position where there is vehicle damage or anything like that, you have the ability to take a photograph that is dated and timed.
I suppose the concern about this is that, that there is, I presume, a huge amount of data. If you've got a bobby out on the beat for 8 hours of the day with his camera switched on for those 8 hours, it must generate, terabytes of information. And I suppose that they store it for a certain period of time. They can't just wipe the card clean every day, I wouldn't have thought.
this dash cam I've got, it'll be on a loop system.
Yeah.
Whereas as you're progressing through the day, whatever was on the card previously, unless you change the card, it's just recorded over.
Yeah.
So you can then lock that particular incident, and that then won't be erased until you physically erase it.
I see. Right, you can
So
sort of
there is
flag
a-
bits, yeah.
Yeah, there are patches in it, but otherwise it's like you used to have the old loop tapes for your record players, etc. The similar principle applies, and you can set it for X number of minutes or hours or continuous.
Yeah.
And if you're in a particular area where there's going to be, or you know there's going to be problems, then you would put it on, say, for continuous.
It's funny, Howard, I was thinking about these dash cams the other day, and I wished, because somebody reversed into my car, I'm not quite sure where, because it could have happened over 2 or 3 days, but reversed into the car, did a load of damage to the car and just drove off, didn't leave a note. And I thought, if I'd have had one of those dash cameras, I bet we'd have got a better chance of tracking down who did it. But then I thought, well, probably when you turn your ignition off, the camera goes off as well, so while it was
some of them
parked.
are activated even if the ignition's off because they have a LiPo battery in them.
Oh, good.
A tiny LiPo, like any mobile phone.
Yes.
And I've got a 16 gigabyte card in mine,
Yeah.
so that carries a multitude. But if there is an incident, exactly what you're saying, it will. Some of the more expensive ones will record front and back.
I might have a go at that in future, because I'd love to track down whoever it was that damaged my car and drove
Well, I
off.
had that a number of years ago with my car. It was only 11 months old. Somebody backed into it, disappeared, and it cost £900 to repair it.
Yeah, oh, I think mine's probably cost that,
But
yeah.
if it had a dash cam at the time, some of these, as I say, are it's possible with them to, if you get a bump or an incident or movement, they will record either the front of the vehicle or the back of the vehicle.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, thank you for that.
No objections to the police wearing them anyway.
Smashing. Thank you very much, Howard. It's important that police cam evidence doesn't mysteriously disappear, says David H., when accusations against the police are made. Well, yes, it ought to be a sackable offence, that, if all of a sudden stuff mysteriously disappears. Phil says, I'm all in favour of them wearing body cameras. Is there somewhere I can log on to look at the bodies? Some of these WPCs are well fit, or am I getting the wrong end of the stick? Yes, you are, Phil, and actually, if you can hear a siren at the moment, they're coming to take you away. Give them cams, but never guns, says somebody else. Great idea to have potential criminals caught and recorded on camera. It may stop this ridiculous situation of those interviewed saying no comment. I couldn't be a cop, as I'd probably jump over the table in frustration and throttle them into saying something, says Ali. Yes, I think they're not terribly keen on that. Digitising the police force is good, but it does prepare the way for artificial intelligence police forces. Good way off yet, I think. Are they doing themselves out of jobs, taking the bobby off the beat and replacing them with static or moving cameras in the next 10 years? Brave new world. I think there's a place for cameras. I don't think that's a worry. Will the cameras be turned off when they're in McDonald's and the local chippy? And do the cops have to pay you image rights? No. On a serious note, does the law have to be changed to allow footage to be admissible in the courts, asks Alan. I don't know, actually. Are these cameras to see if money's been received by the bobby due to an on-the-spot fine, suggests Pete. I'm sure they don't need that.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should more be done to protect cyclists on the island's roads? A campaign group, which was formed 2 years ago after cyclist Kate Burge was struck and killed while riding a bicycle in the island, wants to see new laws introduced. Safe Cycling Isle of Man wants to see a range of road safety measures enshrined in Manx law, including a safe passing distance rule similar to those seen in Europe, the USA and Australia. So what do you think about this? Should more be done in law to protect cyclists on the island's roads? Or are the rules as they stand adequate? Is it really just down to mutual respect, or do there need to be firmer laws in place? Stu, when cyclists pay road tax and insurance, then they can dictate what they want, riding 3 and 4 abreast, causing chaos. I had one trying to race me and overtake going down the rest and be thankful I was in a van. Idiot, says Graham. Well, I have to say my money would have been on the bike probably, downhill like that. Let's go to the lines. We've got Jill on. Hello, Jill.
Well, I think it's a two-way thing. I think the cyclists need to consider the motorists as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I know, and I'm not getting at you, but drivers of big cars think they own the roads. But,
well, we pay so much road tax that we feel as though we own the roads because we pay so much.
Oh, I'll have a coffee morning for you, Stu. No, but you, especially sort of like Ballasalla, it's got several roundabouts, and they come down the road, onto the roundabout, and they don't look to see if there's any traffic coming. They're just, we're here, we're going.
Who's this, the bikes now or the big cars?
Bikers.
Right,
and when you get the big cars doing the same, it could end up nasty.
Yes.
And also, whatever happened to the bell to let people know they're coming?
I don't know whether or not people still have bells. It's a bit old-fashioned, that, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's safe.
Yes, yeah.
But, and there's sort of a lot of, I won't say narrow, but not very wide roads in Ballasalla. And they still persist, the cyclists, in riding two abreast. Well, it's in the highway code, if nowhere else.
Well, I think the highway code says that it's safe to ride two abreast, doesn't it?
If conditions allow.
Yes, yeah. I agree. I mean, just more courtesy on the roads for everybody, whether they're cyclists or truck drivers or whatever, would be a good thing, wouldn't it? But I must admit that since we started talking about this on this programme years ago, probably, about cyclists, I have been taking more notice. And I have seen an awful lot of very bad riding by cyclists, riding the wrong way up a one-way street on the pavement, riding along the pavement far too quickly, going down no entry, ignoring no entry signs and things like that. So I've seen that quite a lot recently. And like I say, I was driving home the other day, and I was driving down the Nunnery, and there was a cyclist who was making fairly hard work of it and going slightly uphill there with a lot of bags on the back of the bike. And I felt sorry for the fella or the woman, whatever it was. But there were two cars that were literally stopped behind it, and this pedal bike was wobbling along very slowly, and a lot of effort being put into it. And there were two cars virtually stopped behind it to wait to overtake it. Now, that road is perfectly wide enough that you can overtake a pedal cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not 1.5 meters, but the people who were waiting to overtake, when they finally did get a road cleared, they went literally right on the other side of the road, and they were probably giving it 3 meters clearance, which is just too much.
Well, yes.
It's almost like they're trying to make a point, and the point didn't need to be made. You've got a cyclist there, you need to allow them plenty of wobble space, but it doesn't mean to say that you've got to stop all the traffic for them to make progress.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's common sense.
Yes, it is.
I don't think you really need laws.
No, I don't either.
I mean,
although a law to ban lycra might not be a bad thing.
You're only jealous.
Yes, I am.
No, but I mean, so long as, all right, they'll bring the laws in. Will they do anything about the laws? Will they take the people to court? Will they fine them?
I worry slightly that we're all being turned into grasses. And I was talking to Howard yesterday about these dashboard-mounted cameras that are becoming more and more popular, so that if you're involved in any sort of accident, you've actually got video evidence that you can show. But I worry that, maybe people that have got these things, and especially if they're mounted on push bikes and you've got a militant cyclist who's keen to sort of make a point about things, are they going to be riding around in such a way with the cameras rolling so that they're trying to catch motorists out and effect prosecutions? That's a bit of a worry. Or whether or not, drivers, if they see somebody overtaking a cyclist and they're only 1 metre away from them, for example, are they going to take the cameras up to the police headquarters and say, look at this, bad driving, dangerous driving? Yeah,
I know. I mean, it is just, as I say, it's a case of give and take.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Should be. Yeah, okay, Jill, thank you very much. You're so right, and so much of life is like that, common sense. It doesn't seem to be much of it around anymore. Nearly hit a bike under the trees, which caused a flickering light effect on the road. The cyclist, dressed all in black, no helmet, should be insured also. If they cause an accident, it's the car driver who has to pay, says Mike. Yep. Doesn't that campaigner realise most of the roads are too narrow, so we have to sit behind this lot and can't overtake? It's easy, ban them off the roads, a lot safer, says Dave. From the Live and Let Live party. Stu, I'm all for giving space to cyclists, but when they wear dark clothing, ride 3 abreast, don't show lights in the fog on the mountain. Not all of them, Stu. It cuts 2 ways, says Bill. Yes, absolutely. Just watched a guy on a push bike go down Hill Street going the wrong way and riding on the pavement. Total ignorance. When cyclists take notice of what's said in the highway code, pay some road tax on their push bikes and have some form of identification on the bikes, they can start demanding this and that, and not before, says Rob. How is this law going to be policed, says Josh? Is it going to be a case of the cyclist word against that of the motorist? Motorists by law have to have roadworthy vehicles that have working lights. Are cyclists going to come under the same scrutiny, including working lights and high-vis clothing? Also, will they have to pass a test like motorists to prove their competence to be allowed to cycle on the road? I'm all for safe driving, but safe cycling must be paramount as well. All you overweight, lazy people keep whining at the cyclists. Your obese figures are disgusting. Get on your bikes. You get on your bike, eh? How about that? Is it just me that's a complete loss to see why anybody of sound mind would go on the roads on a push bike these days? The amount of traffic, the fumes, the knowledge that you're holding up 20 cars and a couple of buses in the rush hour, says Liz. Stuart, the worrying thing that we should be aware of is lycra poisoning. Cyclists who wear normal clothes, in my experience, are very rarely a problem. Once lycra is applied, it renders the wearer car blind. Years to come, I believe that this will be proven, says Pete. OK. All push bikes should have insurance. Fact, says Steve in Sunny Peel. A few people seem to think that. Stuart, the main problem is car drivers not reading the road far enough ahead and planning the manoeuvre well in advance, rather than get behind the bike, then thinking about it. That's Martin of Onken. Stuart, in relation to the lobby to change the law about cycling, we do need to be careful not to change the law based on one incident. That's true, Mark, yeah. The campaign here is motivated purely after one death. Sad, of course, though that is. From this type of special interest lobbying, which is often emotive, very often comes badly thought out laws that in no way change the incidence of the occurrence under question. The Isle of Man already has adequate law about road safety for all users. Making extra ones to cover possible events already considered in the present law is pointless. In case anyone thinks that I'm being callous after the death of a person, then this should be aware that I lost my own brother to a road accident when he was on a motorbike, yet I didn't feel the need to lobby for further laws to be added to the statute. It would have made no difference for us, and the actions that led to his death were illegal then as they are now. Laws should be written soberly and dispassionately, not with wet eyes and a handkerchief. That from Mark, who often makes an awful lot of sense in his very well thought out posts. And yes, I can see the point of a couple of the points that you're making there. Whether or not people agree, Mark, is another thing altogether, but that's what the programme's all about. We like to hear all sides of an argument. Cyclists should be made to wear bright colours and have lights fitted. Now that the dark nights are near, most cyclists are wearing black. Well, it's very slimming, apparently. We used to get stopped for no bike lights. What about today? They ride on pavements and in the dark. No lights. They should get on-the-spot fines. That's from Christine in Douglas. Just for balance, we've lost count the number of times in recent months where I've seen a car overtake a single cyclist way too close and on a blind bend, putting both the cyclist and themselves in danger. Thankfully, a vehicle hasn't come from the opposite direction, as it would have been carnage. Just idiots. On the other side, there are too many cyclists wearing dark clothing out on the roads. They need to be seen as the darker days come in. That's from Tim. I'd like a law to be passed whereby a vehicle has to toot its horn before passing. Some vehicles are so quiet you don't hear them coming, says Joe. Well, yeah, I think that might irritate people, though, if you were to do that. I believe electric cars don't pay road taxes. They don't pollute. Same for cyclists, says Stuart. Stu, cyclists must have third-party insurance. They must be required to be registered as motorists. They must have a high luminance reflective, and registration must be printed on the yellow reflective front and back. They must have lighting to standard motorists. We must have a modern day bell so that people can hear them, according to Buster. Stuart, having a cause to pass legislation is fine, but what would be the statutory distance? How would it be proposed to enforce it, says Bob. I think, Bob, 1.5 meters seems to be the widely accepted distance. So what's that, about 4 or 5 feet is the minimum passing distance that is recommended as being safe. The article related to cyclist in the singular, and I trust any legislation confirms this, and that riding two abreast is made illegal. Younger cyclists are trained to ride at least 60 centimetres from the pavement. Therefore, to pass a vehicle, including another bike being a vehicle, has to be more than 2 metres from the pavement. I also assume that an overtaking bike has to be 1.5 metres from any bike he's overtaking. I guess, yeah.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is maths something that scares people? Less than half of all British adults can do simple financial calculations. A test was taken in 31 countries, and in Britain only 48% of people could answer the questions to a minimum level. That's almost 3/4 of them. Globally, you see what I did there? The average was 56%. What do you think should be done to improve people's confidence using maths? Is it something that you still struggle with, or have you always had a knack for numbers? Let's go to the lines. We're talking about numbers, and we've got Pam on the line. Hello, Pam.
Yes, numbers.
Yes.
Maths. Yes, not a good subject for me.
Nor me.
But there is a condition which a lot of people have, and I'm one of them, although I didn't discover it until about 5-6 years ago, and I'm nearly 70, and it's called dyscalculia.
Oh,
the
yes.
generic version of dyslexia.
Yes.
And it is not as well known, I don't think, as it ought to be, or there's certainly not as much done about it as there is for dyslexia.
I'm not convinced by it, though. I think you've mentioned it before, Pam, or somebody's mentioned it before.
Yeah, I have probably got a bee in my bonnet about it.
I'm not convinced about it. I think it's bad teaching, because I've always been rotten as far as maths is concerned. I was all right with arithmetic at primary school, but my life was ruined completely by teachers when I was a young lad of 11. Started at grammar school. September 1965, my first maths lesson at grammar school, and the teacher threw something at me and called me stupid because I didn't understand the concept of algebra. And she said, "Oh, you've been taught about this at your primary school." And I said, "Honestly, miss, we haven't. Nobody's ever mentioned using letters instead of numbers." And she didn't believe me, so I became the thick kid of the class.
Yeah.
And I think that, I could have been an academic by now without that.
Yeah.
So it's bad teaching.
It is. There is a thing about maths that a lot of people. I don't think that their brains just are not wired for it. It is a lot is down to bad teaching, but I struggle to this day with exchange rates. I mean, I look at the exchange rates in the post office, and they mean absolutely nothing to me.
I see. Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's not just mental arithmetic then that you've got a problem with. It's even if you had a calculator.
Change.
Yeah.
Unless it's a very basic amount, like something costs £20 and I give a £10 note and I get £10 back off that. But if it's starting little bits of change here and there,
okay.
Estimating, I've got to be very careful going around the supermarket.
Yeah.
Estimating how much my bill is going to be when I get to the checkout.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then if I pick something extra up, what was that? And it just goes.
It sounds to me like you might have some sort of a real proper problem then with numbers. Yeah. So this dyscalculia, I think maybe it is a real thing and not just a made-up excuse. Yeah.
And it also affects people in lots of ways with rules of sports.
I see.
Score.
Yeah.
Like I can't enjoy a tennis match because I haven't got a clue what's going on. Two people are bashing the ball across to each other, but how the scoring works, no. I've tried it and tried it and tried it, and I can watch it for say 10 minutes, and I can follow what's happening, and then it just goes.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, it's very peculiar. Now English, I had absolutely no problem with at all. So people always said, you're not stupid. You can do English, you can write, you can spell, you can do your geography, your history, all the rest of it. Yeah. But because of the maths, you were constantly marked down.
Yeah, well, I had the same thing. I was useless at maths from that point on.
And there are things whereby I well remember until I was sort of doing a bit of research with this dyscalculia, and people who were slow to learn to tell the time. Yeah. I was nearly 9 years of age before I could tell the time.
Interesting. That is interesting. Good. So there's more to it than meets the eye there.
There's more to it. I certainly believe that the teaching could be a lot better. It could be more sort of adapted to everyday life.
Well, my parents paid for extra maths lessons. I had private lessons because I just didn't get it.
No.
And I tried to get my dad, who was always very good with arithmetic and stuff, very good with numbers, and he didn't get algebra or trigonometry or any of those things either.
No.
And so I had private lessons, and it just never clicked with me ever.
And these silly little puzzles that with so many this and so many that, what is the next in this sequence?
Well, some of those I don't mind so much because, but yeah. With me, I never understood algebra till I was learning to fly, and my instructor gave me a weight and balance calculation to do, which was an algebraic formula. And I said, I'm never going to be able to do that. He said, well, you're never going to get your license without it. And so let me explain it to you. W equals, and I said, oh no, I'm getting word blindness now already, you know, when you're talking about W equals. He said, well, W is the weight of the aeroplane.
Yeah.
And at that point, the scales fell from my eyes and it all made sense.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is actually having a practical application for the things rather than it just being taught in limbo kind of thing.
Well, I never, when I went to high school, as I say, it was marked down because I was so poor at maths and arithmetic, so we never, ever got round to algebra.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, we were slogging on at our fractions and percentages, which are also... Well, the best thing that happened to me with numbers was when we went decimal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that did make things an awful lot easier, I have to say. Adding 5/16 to 3/4 and all the rest of it, it was always difficult. When you refer to maths, I presume that you're mainly referring to simple arithmetic rather than far more complicated areas of mathematics, says David H. I expect so, David, yes. No formula for it. Yes, I shy away from maths of any form. I'm not proud about it, but my brain just isn't wired well enough. That's from Kev. I once bought 25 38p stamps from my local shop. Firstly, I couldn't believe it when she counted the 5x5 sheet singly from 1 to 25, and she had to use the till to find out that 38 times 25 is £9.50. Is this a generation thing, says David H. I think I'd probably, I wouldn't have to check a 5x5 sheet to see if there were 25 there, but I think I'd probably do 38 times 25 on a till or a calculator to make sure I got it right. If children played darts, snooker and poker and did the football pools or bet on horses, perhaps they would be better at arithmetic and working out odds. Yeah, I suppose so. You can't argue with maths. More people need to understand it, especially in politics, says Michael, who then goes into a moan about civil service pay rises, which are not anything to do with this point. There are three kinds of people in the world, mathematicians and others, says David H. Yes, good. I've never had a problem reading the balance on my bank statement, as it's always the smallest number on the page. That's rich by name and not by nature. I've used Pythagoras' theory in engineering to find right angles, says P. OK, well, I bet there aren't many of us that learn those things at school that ever use them ever again. Pythagoras never made sense to me, learning parrot fashion, but when you see the triangle drawn, it all becomes clear. It was a eureka moment when I finally saw it as an adult, says John. OK, and pi, you know, what's all that about? My mother was a maths teacher, I know it was a film, maths teacher in the school I attended, which was mortifying, I bet. She didn't teach me in school, but I struggled with maths, which was even more mortifying. I shone at English, but eventually ended up in a job working with figures and was very good at it. Basic maths was fine, but geometry, etc. just confused me, says Sue. Colin says, listening with interest, remember when we had to write the answers to our questions, SR, i.e. we deduced the answer with the use of a slide rule, pre-calculator days. Yes, I've used a circular slide rule with the flying job, but I've never used one of the ordinary ones. Good.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme this week. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website is also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.